Good morning, friends.
Bonjour, chers amis.
Guests.
Bonjour, chers invités.
Colleagues.
Chers collègues.
Participants in this very exciting and very informative session,
réunion et à cette
which is ahead of us.
D'informations et très excitantes.
Welcome
Alors,
to the session.
Bienvenue à cette session.
Is the company capable of narrowing social inequalities?
Réduire les inégalités sociales.
And I will start with a question because the session has a title.
Parce que donc cette session a comme
How
titre
many of
une
you
question.
believe
Combien d'entre vous pensent
that the company
que la société
can make a difference
peut faire la
in
différence
regard with narrowing
en ce
the
qui
inequality
concerne,
gaps? Please
les
raise your hand.
inégalités sociales. Alors, levez la main si vous pensez que l'entreprise peut réduire ces inégalités sociales.
Wow. Surrounded by believers.
Alors, oui.
How many don't believe?
Mais combien d'entre vous ne croient pas
Come on.
que l'entreprise
Be
peut réduire
honest.
les inégalités sociales? Alors, soyez honnêtes, je vous prie.
Wow. Okay. So
Nous avons vu.
we feel much more
Et
comfortable,
nous
but
ressentons
still
beaucoup plus
we would
confortables,
like to
mais
make sure
nous
that when you leave
voudrions
this
nous assurer
session,
que lorsque
you
vous
are
allez quitter
even
cette session,
more
vous
firm
allez encore,
believer and even more inspired about entrepreneurship that leads to narrowing social
l'entrepreneuriat
inequalities.
qui amène cette réduction des inégalités sociales.
My name is Teodorina
Je
Lesidrenska.
m'appelle Teodorina
It is a
Lesidrenska.
Bulgarian name.
C'est un nom bulgare.
For the last 20 years,
pour les
I
20
have been
depuis les 20 dernières
practicing
années, j'ai
sustainable development. I'm a
pratiqué le développement
practitioner
pérenne. Je suis
involved in
praticienne
the
et je suis
implementation
impliquée
of this
dans
concept
l'application de ce concept
among organizations,
parmi
within
les
organizations,
au sein des
and
organisations
with companies
et au sein des
internationally.
sociétés, au niveau international.
Here I'm representing
Ici, je
Swiss
représente
Foundation,
une
Globetics
fondation
Net.
suisse.
We are
Globetics,
partners
nous sommes
of Forum Lille,
partenaires
have been
de
partners for
Forum
years.
Lille.
And
Nous avons
the
participé
topic
depuis
of
des années.
inequalities
Et le
is
sujet
close to
d'inégalité
the
sociale
ethical
est
agenda
très,
of
très
Globetics Net.
proche de Globetics
I
et de
am
son
going to
agenda
be the facilitator
moral.
of
Donc,
this
moi, je
session.
serai le facilitateur
We
de
have
cette session,
three
modérateur. Nous
very
avons trois
passionate speakers on this
orateurs
topic
passionnés
with
par
a lot
ce
of
sujet.
experience,
Ils ont
each
pas mal
of them
d'expérience et
representing
chacun
a
d'entre eux
company,
représente une société,
social enterprise,
une entreprise
or
sociale,
company which has
ou une
produced
société qui
a
a
product,
produit un
provided
produit,
solution
qui a
addressing the
fourni une
issues
solution,
of
qui s'est
inequality.
occupé de ce problème d'inégalité sociale.
And one after another, I will say a few words about each of them. We have Mark Brandt
Nous
from
avons
Canada.
Mark Brown qui nous vient du Canada.
He is owner
Et il est le
and
propriétaire
partner
et
in
le partenaire
Mark Brandt Incorporated.
De la société Mark
He
Brand.
owns about 7 different
Il
companies,
a
correct?
7 sociétés
In
différentes,
Vancouver,
je pense,
Canada.
à Vancouver, au
And
Canada.
he is a passionate
Et
social
il est-
entrepreneur focused on
Il est un
changing
entrepreneur social passionné. Il
poor
souhaite
and
changer
disadvantaged communities
les
in
communautés
Vancouver.
désavantagées et pauvres au sein de
Our
Vancouver.
second speaker
Le
is
deuxième orateur
Magnus
sera
Kushel.
Magnus Kushel,
He's from Sweden
qui nous vient de
and
Suède
he works for
et
Volvo,
qui travaille pour la
a big
société
multinational.
Volvo. C'est une grosse multinationale.
Magnus has been involved
Magnus a été
in many
impliqué
projects.
dans de nombreux projets.
He is actually a person who feels very
est une
comfortable
personne qui
and
se
he is
sent très, très bien
inventing products
et
in
qui
the
invente des
IT
produits
field.
dans le domaine informatique.
So what is interesting
Alors,
about
ce qui est
him
intéressant
is
en ce qui concerne
addressing
sa
the
personne,
issue
c'est
of
qu'il
inequality
il
through
s'occupe
development of products
des inégalités
and through
sociales dans le
ensuring
développement des
that
produits.
the application,
Il veut
the
s'assurer que
use of these
l'application,
products
l'utilisation de ce produit
is addressing problems. Not
s'occupe
only
de ce
problems of
problème.
inequality,
Non
but
seulement
also
des problèmes
problems
des
of
inégalités sociales, mais également
environmental
d'autres problèmes,
nature.
des problèmes environnementaux.
And I will mention a few of the
Alors,
things
je vais
he
mentionner
has
quelques petites choses
put at use.
qu'il a faites.
He has a startup
Il
such
a
as
une
Yubigo,
start-up, Yubigo,
and he leads the
il
CommuteGreener
dirige
program.
le programme
He
Communauté
is the
verte.
leader of the
Il est
Volvo
le
IT
dirigeant
Innovation Center.
du centre d'innovation
And
chez Volvo.
really his focus
Et
is
vraiment,
about
il met
innovation,
l'accent sur l'innovation,
partnerships,
sur le partenariat,
advanced IT
et
usage
sur
for delivering of sustainable
l'utilisation
value.
informatique avancée
And
pour le
Dylan
développement pérenne.
Wilk,
Alors,
many of you
Dylan,
know
Wilk,
Dylan from
je crois que vous
yesterday's
connaissez
opening
Dylan
session.
parce qu'il a parlé
He
hier
is
à
a
la session
successful
d'ouverture.
entrepreneur
Il
in
est un entrepreneur
one part of
couronné
his
de
life,
succès,
very successful,
et
traditional
il a connu le succès de
businessman
manière traditionnelle.
who
C'était un
now is
businessman
committed
traditionnel.
to
Maintenant,
social enterprise
il s'est
development.
engagé dans le développement social.
And he is from UK,
Il vient du
but
Royaume-Uni,
lives in Philippines.
mais il vit aux Philippines.
In his work, he works closely with
il travaille
Tony
en étroite
Melotto
collaboration
in
avec Tony
Gavad
Melotto
Kalinga Communities Development Organization.
Dans l'organisation du
The
développement
company
communautaire de Kalinga.
which
la
I
société,
think he will focus more
sur laquelle il va
today
se
is
centraliser
the company
aujourd'hui,
Human
c'est la
Nature,
société
a
Human
cosmetic
Nature,
company,
c'est-à-dire une
social
société de produits
enterprise
cosmétiques,
leader
une
in the
entreprise
market of
sociale
organic
qui est
cosmetics in the Philippines.
très très importante aux Philippines.
So welcome to our
Alors,
speakers.
bienvenue aux trois orateurs
And
de ce matin.
before to
Et
quickly
avant
turn attention to the session content itself and start with presentations, I just thought that it is important to make sure that we understand the terminology used. It is not a typical business terminology. When we talk about inequality or hear about inequality, and this is a hot topic nowadays, I have discovered that every one of us has completely different understanding what it means. So today, just to put things on the equal level, I just will start with the definition of inequality, which is from the UN Global Consultation on Inequalities, part of the Rio +20 follow-up process. According to this definition, inequalities are differences in opportunities and outcomes for people in different groups, such as families, social groups, gender, racial groups, communities and countries. Inequalities create deprivation, exclusion, different forms of discrimination, and limit life changes, leading to accumulation of fear, insecurity, powerlessness, and disadvantage for growing number of people globally, while creating growing wealth, opportunity, power, and influence for a very small percentage of the population, the so-called 1%, even less than 1%. When we talk about inequalities, we usually first think about economic and social inequalities, access to financial resources, access to social position, even access to health, access to different social services. But we should keep in mind that there are some other types of and domains where the issue of inequality is very strong, such as political inequalities, where the question is about representational inequality, lack of access to opportunities to exercise political power. Also, environmental inequalities. This is unequal exposure to hazards, environmental hazards, and also unequal access to environmental resources. From this report of the consultation process on inequalities, there are very interesting 3 points which I wanted to highlight before we start with the session. Inequalities are a global challenge. They persist both within all countries and between them. Inequalities are not just problems for the people whose lives are most directly affected. Those most disadvantaged and excluded. They have deep consequences for everyone in the society. Inequalities harm us all. Among these consequences are reductions in the peace and sustainability of economic growth, diminishment of the productive potential of all who are harmed and excluded, and the loss of this potential for the society, the worsening of existing fragilities and vulnerabilities, including conflict and disasters, and the weakening of social cohesion and of security for all. Addressing inequalities is not only the right thing in principle, but also vital in ensuring that we have sustainable and peaceful world. In conclusion of this introduction of the topic, without addressing the issues of growing inequality gaps in all domains, the concept of sustainable development in practice cannot be implemented. So this topic is of crucial importance for the conference, where we're talking about different aspects of responsible economy and how to create these models of responsible economy. So let's now move toward our session. I would like to start with our first speaker. This is Mark. And First, I promised to all my speakers that I would like to make sure we hear how they understand inequality themselves. So Mark, we would like to hear about your model of addressing inequality issues. And you may start with just saying what inequality means for you first. And is there a moment in your life when you faced inequality and this created a change in your way you understand business and you want to do business? Because another message from many other forums on this topic is you cannot understand inequality if you haven't faced it. You don't know what is poverty if you haven't touched it, smelled it, mixed it with the people who are poor and disadvantaged. So Mark, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm going to stand and pace because it's something I do. Firstly, good morning. How's everybody doing? Half awake? Good. I'm going to get you all the way awake. I'm going to get you to do a little exercise with me. If you could all stand up for me, please. Be mindful of who's next to you in your space. And then just follow along with me, okay? Be very careful of the people next to you. Take this hand and bring it into the center. And the same with the other one for me. And then no matter what religion or denomination you are, please close your eyes and hope that none of us make any big mistakes today. Thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit of inequality, and I think what our wonderful moderator was referring to is a statement that we often use as walk a mile in a man's shoes is something that we say all the time, which is almost impossible to do unless you've been there. So for us to understand as a world what it's like to suffer inequalities is near impossible unless we have faced it firsthand or unless we spend a great deal of time with people who have faced those things, whether it be racism, marginalization due to poverty, drug addiction, mental illness, all of those sorts of things. So I'm going to start with that. I'm going to find my way back to it, but we're going to go from there. Just behind you on the screen, I think it's incredibly important that we're not going to be able to have this whole conversation today. That's a fact. But luckily, there is the internet. That's me on the internet right there. You're going to have questions for me that will arise tomorrow, maybe next week, a month later. I do use the internet. And I love questions and I love conversation. So please make sure to interact with me there. And we'll keep talking because everybody has something to say and something to contribute. So my name is Mark Brand. I'm from Canada. Has anybody been to Canada? 5 people? Okay, great. It's cold. There's polar bears. They run wild. We still shoot 6-shooter revolvers. We have no formal economy. All of those things are not true. I was born in Scotland, in Dundee. I lived in Tunisia, in London, England, in Calgary, in Nova Scotia, both in Canada. And then the world destination for tourism, Nigeria. Lagos, Port Harcourt, and Warri. Has anybody here been to Nigeria? Exactly. Okay, so when I was in Nigeria and all the other places that I lived, I got to see a great amount of inequality, difference in class systems, and extreme poverty. And most importantly, what affected me really early was that I saw death as a young boy. I was 14 through 17 when I was there. And it really took me aback that with all of the capabilities of media and what we would see, how we had not seen this where I lived. We hadn't seen dead bodies on the side of the road, the insane inequality and raping, pillaging of the country itself. because it was instilled in me very early, I think because of my travel, that we're all connected. We're all human beings living on one planet. We share it. And if something is going wrong in a certain space, shouldn't it be our responsibility to fix it as a world? Very complicated statement. Not really easy for a 15-year-old boy to understand because I was too busy trying to chase girls and get a nice car. But it did stick with me. And I attribute my time there to wanting to make the world a better place and understanding as much of it as I possibly could through travel and through engagement. I then moved to Australia and I lived there for almost 10 years, and in that time I traveled throughout Asia and got to see similar, while not quite as extreme, circumstances. But what I changed my focus to at that point was understanding how people were doing so much with so very little. A topic that I like to speak on, which is unconventional solutions. How they solve their levels of poverty happily and are able to create food systems and local economies that are innate and inherent to what they do, but were completely foreign to me. I was diagnosed with an illness when I was in Australia applying for my permanent residency and was told that I had to leave the country, essentially. So I went back to Canada, quite upset, as you can imagine, after establishing myself there for 10 years. And I found myself here. I knew the slide thing was going to be an issue. Are you with me? Did you nod off back there? There you are. Hi. This is my neighborhood. I own 7 businesses in the downtown east side and operate there. If you can see the slide pretty clearly, there's a giant neon sign. And that is my project that I'll speak on today. It's called Save On Meats. It's a butcher shop that was established in 1957 in Vancouver. Here, that's not very old in Vancouver. It's extremely old. We are a province that's only 125 years. So directly across from it, you'll be able to see tents that are set up. And there's a consistent protest, and homelessness is a huge issue in this area. Directly to the left of it, you'll see condominiums. The condominiums sell for around 740,000 euros and upwards for about 600 square feet. And on the right side of my business, which is exactly about 95 steps from those condos, is a $285 or 130 euro per month room where people live in transitional housing, in extreme poverty, addiction, and mental illness. This neighborhood has been looked away from by the majority of our country and left alone, although it is the biggest open-air drug market in North America. It's the poorest postal code in Canada, and it's dead set in the middle of one of the richest provinces, places on the planet. I operated my first restaurants, which were for-profit businesses. I had no intention of doing any social good in this particular part of the world because I had no idea what that would look like or how to do so. So I ran restaurants. My first restaurant, named after my mom, Benita, I opened in 2006, a block away from the center of this. And it was a fine dining restaurant because I was taught location, location, location. It was really difficult when we were trying to get the space operating because I would come to work and people were injecting heroin in their eyeballs literally everywhere across the street. And to try and get the area ready for service and ready for the people who were coming to the restaurant required a lot of work with people who you wouldn't normally think to engage with, or I wouldn't have at that point. Also, when we were doing repairs and fixing the restaurant and the space, a lot of the neighbors and the people who were living on the street there or living within the housing would come and say, "Can I help?" And so I took a lot of them on in what we call the informal economy and paid them cash to help me do things like fix drywall, attend to some of the plumbing, etc. I didn't do that because I wanted to give them a hand. I was doing it because it was affordable and easy. But something happened while all that was going on. And over the years of building businesses by osmosis, I fell in love with the neighborhood and also with the thought that if I'm helping 1 or 2 people out doing this, I bet you I could help more people. But I didn't understand again how to do it. The restaurant business is one of, at best, 15% margin in profit. If that profit is coming off a $500,000, $600,000 business, it doesn't sustain very much as far as charitable giving goes. And just for clarity, I don't believe in the charitable model. I think that it is a model that has been exhausted, and I think that what we need to work on and what we're going to talk a lot about today is sustainable business that would be referred to as capital business that then works with the social economy. So how did I come to this epiphany that I wanted to do more and help more? There's a gentleman who really affected my life, and you know, sometimes you have a series of moments, and sometimes you have one really big one, and the big one that I had was with this gentleman right here. Would you mind changing the slide, please? Thank you. That's great. So this charming gentleman that you're looking at right here, handsome devil, his name is Michael Haggerty, and Michael would clean the streets in front of my restaurants and all around the neighborhood, and we didn't know each other, and truthfully I was extremely intimidated by him. I couldn't understand what it was that he was doing at 7 a.m., sweeping the streets, getting rid of used needles or pipes, etc. And it wasn't until later that I understood why I was intimidated by him. So I'd see him every single day. Literally, we'd brush shoulders, but he wouldn't speak to anybody in the street. And then one particularly cold day, in the winter, I stepped outside of my house, my residence, which is right next door to the restaurant, and I saw Michael laying on a piece of cardboard, dusted lightly with snow, and barely covered up. Now, he was always very well put together, so it struck me that this is strange, and I was really nervous, but I said, I have to do something. In my head, and my ego was speaking to me and saying, go do something. So I walked over to speak to Mike, and I leaned down, and I said, are you okay? And he looked directly up and said, no, obviously not. So our relationship started with me feeling like an idiot. And Michael and I decided that we would talk and figure out what was happening with the situation. So I invited him into the restaurant, and he came and sat with me. And Michael suffers from Asperger's syndrome, or OCD and ADD, accelerated by drug use, methamphetamines, and he's a 35-year heroin addict. He was living in what's called an SRO, or a single room occupancy, an 8x10. There's thousands of them in my neighborhood. It's essentially transitional housing, shared bathrooms, and they're in really rough shape for the most part. It's an attempt to answer the housing crisis that we face in Vancouver. Michael's hotel had been infested with bed bugs. So suffering from obsessive compulsive disorder and Asperger's accentuated, he obviously couldn't stay there. He had to leave. So when he left, he went to a shelter, didn't get in, and found himself on the street. When he went back to get all of his belongings, they were incinerated, destroyed, which is a common practice because they had bed bugs and nobody came to get them and clean them. And so I said to him, no problem, we'll just get you some new clothing and we'll find a shelter for you and I'll get you some stabilized housing with friends of mine who do that. Everything's going to be okay. And he was still very upset. And I said, is there something else that we can do? And he said, I'm not upset about the belongings. I'm very upset because all the pictures of my family were incinerated. And I don't know what happened at that particular moment, but I felt almost like a crack in my sternum. That was the last piece that held him directly to society and his family because he didn't see them anymore, and he's living on the street, and this is the situation, the housing and the bed bugs and all of these things, and we're Canadian citizens and we pay an insane amount of time. None of this is okay. All came on at once. And so Michael started to work for me, and has worked for me every single day since 7 years, is a proud grandfather, is clean, and is sort of the linchpin into an employment program that's our barrier employment program at Save On Meats. We try to find solutions in the neighborhood to things that are a huge problem. And this is what I'm going to finish and turn it over to our next speaker about. Lots of questions to come. But what you're seeing right here is a program I invented called the Token Program. In our neighborhood, there's an extreme amount of hunger. But the problem is, if somebody comes up to you and asks you for money who looks disheveled, what's your immediate reaction? What do you think? Anybody? It's an uncomfortable question. Thank you very much, Eduardo. That they'll use it for drugs. In a neighborhood that's the biggest open-air drug market in North America, they're probably going to use it for drugs. And people were very upset by me saying this. So if you give them money or you give them a gift card, it all ends up in the drug dealer's hands. This has no denomination, no monetary value whatsoever. We created it.
Ici, nous avons créé
It costs
ce
$1.67 or pennies. And you have to physically give it to, you have to walk up to somebody and say, here, this is for you if you're hungry. And that interaction is one of the most important parts of the program. When I started it, I thought I'd maybe redeem 3 or 4 a day. We redeem between 80 and 120 every single day. That's 80 and 120 interactions. It's not a gift. It's not charity. Somebody purchased this. It makes me money. It goes into somebody's hand. The interaction is there. The conversation continues. And it's extremely successful. Some people didn't like it so much. So there's always a climactic thing when you're trying to do social business because people feel guilt and there's anger. And they're trying to figure out what it is, and our government should be helping. This shouldn't be a problem for business. It's a problem for business. So my sandwich board was stolen by anarchists. And they sent me essentially a death threat, saying if I didn't stop doing business in the neighborhood the way I was doing it, that they would systemically break me down by stealing my sandwich board. I had a response to this, and instead of being angry, I understand what their problem was. This was my response. I hope everybody can see that. I created the same sandwich board with the anarchists and a circle cut out so you could put your face in it and take a picture. For every one of these pictures that was taken and shared on the internet, we bought a meal for people who need it. Within 2 weeks, it was 4,000. This is the way we work with conventional business and keep the solutions coming and going, and we fail consistently. The most important thing to realize about the new way of doing business is that if you're not doing social programs, you're dead in the water, and that you're going to fail over and over and over again. But with communities like this, we're going to figure out how to make all of these solutions stick. Thank you.
Thank you. Great start.
Merci.
So, my name is Magnus
Quel
Kushel.
début. Alors, je suis Magnus.
First, before going into
Tout d'abord,
actually sharing the slides and picking up from Theodora's
de
thought.
reprendre la suite.
Yes, thank you.
Et pour répondre à Théodora,
Relationship
je
to
voulais dire
social
que
equality,
ma
inequalities.
relation avec les
I'll give
inégalités
3 brief
sociales,
examples.
je vais vous donner 3 exemples.
When I was born,
Bref,
I had a
quand je suis
7-year
né,
older
J'avais
sister
une sœur
She
qui avait
was
7 ans de plus que moi et
with too little oxygen.
qui
That
est née avec des
her brain
problèmes,
not functioning like our brains.
qui est
So
née
when
avec
I
un
was
déficit en
6,
oxygène
7
et donc
years
son
old, I
cerveau ne
still hadn't
fonctionnait pas
grasped that
correctement.
was a
Et quand
thing.
j'avais
I felt it
6-7 ans,
was
pour moi, c'était pas un
inequality
problème.
to me
Pour
personally,
moi, c'était une égalité
to
envers
that so
moi,
much attention was
parce
given
que
to my older sister, etc.
on lui prêtait beaucoup d'attention.
So what have I learned afterwards
Et donc,
and what do I want
qu'est-ce
to
que j'ai
share on
appris
that?
par la suite et
That's-
qu'est-ce que je voulais
it's all
partager?
about
Eh bien,
perspectives.
tout ça est une question de
My
point de
older
vue.
sister can give so
Ma
much love,
grande
and
sœur
I can nowadays also
peut,
try to give that. But
donner
it
beaucoup
started off a bit
d'amour et
rough,
moi
so
aujourd'hui
inequality also
j'essaye
has
de
to
le
do with
faire.
perspectives.
Mais voilà,
Second
les
example.
inégalités sociales ou le social,
I
c'est
had
toujours
a
une question de
life-changing moment
perspective.
going to
Deuxièmement,
Romania,
lorsque je
building
suis allée en Roumanie,
housing for homeless
j'ai
kids
construit
over summer.
des logements pour
And
les
Then I
enfants
was
des
more
rues lors d'un
insightful
été
and
et
so
ça a
on, but
changé ma
still
vie.
being there
Être
together
là-bas
with them and building
avec ses
that,
enfants,
that gives a
à
lot
faire ces
of
constructions,
understanding.
eh bien, ça permet de comprendre beaucoup de
inequalities
choses.
is not only about
Les inégalités,
perspectives,
ce n'est
it's
pas
also
qu'une
about
question de point de vue, c'est aussi une question
understanding
de
and thereby
compréhension
engaging, just like
et
Martin,
donc de
some good
s'engager
examples
comme
of and so
Marc
forth.
l'a fait avec ses exemples.
Thirdly then, and touching over to how
Troisièmement,
we're related to in business, my example of
et pour
inequality
lier
or how
cela
I
aux
define
entreprises,
inequality
comment
in
je
business
définis
can also
les
come from the
inégalités
boardrooms
lorsqu'on
inside
voit
Volvo Group.
le conseil d'administration
And
donc de Volvo
it's
Group,
very much about setting priorities.
eh bien,
When you are a large
il s'agit de
organization,
fixer les priorités.
and you
Lorsque
need
l'on
to
est dans
deal
une
with
grande organisation et qu'on
inequalities,
doit
it's
gérer
about
les
setting
inégalités,
priorities.
il s'agit de fixer les priorités.
So with those 3 elements,
Avec
perspectives,
ces 3 éléments,
learning,
point de vue,
and setting priorities,
compréhension
I
et
want to go over
priorité,
to the actual presentation
eh
and
bien, je
share
vais
a
passer
couple
à
of
ma
aspects
présentation.
as such. And thereby starting with, if I get the clicker working,
Est-ce que je peux...
Yes.
Est-ce que les slides
to
peuvent
set your
fonctionner,
target,
s'il vous
to
plaît?
see
Alors,
the progress and
fixez
share
votre objectif,
experiences. I want to start
partagez
with a question
votre
to you
expérience,
and
voir les
relating that to
progrès.
setting a target.
Commençons par donc fixer
What
votre objectif.
do you, your
Qu'est-ce
friends,
que vous, vos
or
amis
people want?
ou les gens veulent?
if I can offer, I have an offer to you also
J'ai une
with the
proposition à
CommuteGreener.
vous faire
And
avec
that offer
mon organisation
relates to getting
CommuteGreener.
more quality time.
Il s'agit de
someone of
gagner en
you,
qualité.
Your
Dans le temps que vous
friends
passez
or
à faire les
colleagues, are you
choses.
interested in having more
Est-ce que
quality time in
vous, vos
your life?
collègues, vous souhaitez avoir plus de temps de qualité
Do we,
dans votre
if you
vie?
want to give
Est-ce
some
que vous-
interaction, either say yes
N'hésitez pas à
or
lever la
raise a
main.
hand
Je
or
ne vous demande
something
pas de
like that.
hurler, mais si vous voulez, vous pouvez le faire. Levez la main, tout
If you
simplement.
want better health,
Si vous voulez être en
you
meilleure
think that
santé,
people want that?
est-ce que vous pensez que les gens veulent être en meilleure santé?
Now we're starting, yes,
Allez, vous
early in the
commencez à
morning,
lever
but
les mains.
yes,
Bien,
we're getting
c'est
there.
tôt le matin,
And
mais
then
allez-y, n'hésitez
it
pas.
doesn't have to be with you, but do you
Et
feel also that
est-ce que
some
vous
people
pensez
want
que
a
certaines
little bit
personnes, pas
extra
forcément
at the
vous,
end of the month than not having the extra?
préfèrent avoir un peu plus de
And
choses à la
then,
fin du mois plutôt qu'un peu
although a
moins?
lot of people are nowadays a bit climate fatigue,
Alors,
to
on
do
est
something
tous,
good for the planet at the same time. Is that a good idea?
un peu...
Yes, thank you, thank you.
on
Good.
fait tous
So
attention au climat, donc on
these are the
souhaite que la planète soit
foundation
plus écologique,
for
n'est-ce pas?
CommuteGreener.
Alors
such.
voilà donc les piliers sur lesquels
And
repose
that's what I will share
CommuteGreener.
just briefly
Et
on, but we don't want to make a lot of presentation. We
on ne
really
va pas
want
faire une
engagement,
longue
questions,
présentation,
interactions
c'est
from you,
plutôt
but
une question
let me just try to
d'interaction, un
briefly
débat
explain
entre nous.
how to see the progress with
On va
CommuteGreener.
voir
It
comment
all starts
évaluer
with
les progrès
part
avec
of an
CommuteGreener.
invitation
Tout d'abord,
to
ça
get
commence à partir d'une
better
invitation
time,
afin d'avoir un
health,
temps,
money, and at the
meilleure
end of the day
qualité,
helping to
meilleure
save the
santé,
planet, which can go
une
really
meilleure planète
quickly
et
in the movement inside
une
an
plus grande
organization
richesse.
or a city
Voilà
addressing a
par quoi on peut
certain
commencer
neighborhood,
dans
so
une
forth.
organisation,
We've done this
une
both in
municipalité.
Mexico,
Ça a
it's
été fait
large in
à
New York,
Mexico,
in Bangalore,
à New
etc.
York, à Bangalore
And in a number of areas.
et dans d'autres
And
endroits.
value grows over time.
Il faut
So it starts
estimer
with an invitation,
valoriser la
it starts with
croissance de par le temps.
interaction
Ça
and
commence
so
avec
on
une invitation, une
to
interaction.
reduce congestion.
Il s'agit de réduire au
We try to
départ
find
la
congestion
circulation
as one thing of
routière
addressing
dans les
both
villes
inequalities as
afin de
well as
réduire les inégalités
other social dimensions,
et d'autres
primarily
aspects
environmental
sociaux,
dimensions, but also a
environnementaux
number of financial dimensions.
et également
Nobody
financiers.
gain from congestion as such.
Parce que
And
la
by having
circulation
then
routière,
the
les
possibility, and
embouteillages
that's the
créent de
in
nombreux
the
problèmes.
mid-size of the slide as such, to
Alors,
provide a real-time
on voit au milieu
performance
de la
on
diapositive qu'il
connecting
s'agit
people
d'avoir des
in a better
résultats en
way
temps
and
réel sur la
making
façon
them
dont nous
leaving.
connectons
Our
les
target
personnes
group are
entre
those
elles
people that are still going
Comment-
alone in their car.
Et
That's
pour
our
réduire
target
le
group,
nombre
to make
de
them, if
personnes
they
qui sont
change
seules
one
dans leur
day per
voiture.
week,
Si
it's a
un jour
20%
dans la semaine,
change.
eh
If
bien,
they change one
ils
day
changent
per
cette habitude,
month,
ça fait
it's a
20% du
5%
temps.
change.
S'ils
Doesn't
changent une fois
sound
par
too
mois, ça
much
fait
if you're young and
5%.
want to change
Ça,
all the
pour vous,
world
ça ne
in one
paraît pas
time,
beaucoup si
but
vous êtes jeune et que vous
actually
voulez changer le
changing
monde
behaviors is quite
rapidement, mais
significant numbers.
ce sont des
And
chiffres importants en termes de
what-
changement de comportement.
What I met with I was on stage just after Al Gore, Vice President Al Gore in Mexico not too long
Al
ago, and he
Gore,
used to
il y a
speak
pas
about
longtemps,
this
était à
off the
Mexico
chart, if you
et
remember. And
j'ai
in our
parlé
area,
après
what we
lui.
do off the chart is really to do the measurable
Et
results
Ce qui est
from a bottom-up
important, c'est de mesurer
perspective.
et
To
de
do
voir les
that in
choses,
terms
de
of
partir du
CO2
bas et
and also
d'arriver au
cost
tout, de partir des
factors, and
facteurs
also getting
concrets
a better
pour
understanding
mesurer
for
le
what is
carbone et autre
carbon
chose,
dioxide
de
emissions
comprendre ce que sont
on
les
a
émissions de dioxyde de
gram
carbone.
and ounces level, not only on megaton and gigaton,
Et,
but also relating
en partant
to
du
that
plus
for
petit,
us
en
as
partant des
personal
grammes,
individuals.
et non pas que des mégatonnes,
So
en
that
partant
is
donc
part
de
of
notre
seeing the
consommation
progress.
individuelle. Et c'est
And
comme ça qu'on peut mesurer
To
les
share the
progrès.
experience, and these slides will be
Et
available
pour
afterwards, but we
partager
started
l'expérience, et vous aurez
2009.
ces
We've been
diapositives
doing this
disponibles
in
après
a
la session.
number
On a commencé en
of
2009
geographical areas with a
dans
number of
de différentes
companies,
régions
both
avec
in a
certaines
white
entreprises,
label area where organization purchase this, do
dans
some
là où
friendly
les organisations
competition inside, so you have
achètent
people working in
des
the
produits, où il y a
marketing area,
une
friendly
concurrence
competition about, to get,
loyale,
versus those in the
alors que
manufacturing area versus those in sales, etc., and building up results
et
bottom up.
ensuite, on
that has
a
learned
développé
to
nos
that
activités dans
we're
d'autres
now
domaines de la
launching, and
fabrication.
that's the invitation to you as well.
Et là, c'est une invitation
From
pour
this year
vous.
on, it's an open
À partir de
innovation
cette
platform.
année, on a créé une
You
innovation
can Google that
une
if you
plateforme d'innovation
haven't
ouverte.
learned
Vous
about
pouvez
open innovation and
le
so on, but
Google
it's
si vous ne
really
savez
a
pas ce que c'est qu'une
driver
innovation ouverte,
for
mais
how digital assets
un
So
facteur qui nous
Mark's
permet
focus and so on is
d'améliorer
in a
notre
physical
richesse
way, spreading a
numérique.
concept
Marc,
about
lui, le fait de
food
façon
and so on.
physiquement,
We are bridging the physical
concrètement, et
transportation
nous,
with a
il
digital
s'agit
platform, enabling
d'améliorer
these type of
le
engagement
transport
to
par une
reduce
plateforme
the pains of
numérique.
congestion,
Et pour
and
réduire la
enabling
circulation
measurable
routière, les
results that goes into
embouteillages
everything from
et
CSR
obtenir des
reports
résultats
to
mesurables
part of the Kyoto protocols
pour amener des
what have you.
chiffres pour le
So
Kyoto
that's a way
le
on sustainable
protocole de
development.
Kyoto et
I
autres.
will end up with just stating that it's a very easy way to
C'est une façon très
implement these
simple
as
de
well,
mettre
and
en œuvre
it's
ces
one or two
actions.
physical interactions, but
Il y a
otherwise
une ou
the
deux
model is
interactions physiques, mais
digital
le
while
modèle est
changing the
numérique,
physical
digital,
behaviors on a measurable way.
tout en
But,
changeant
so,
concrètement les
in terms
habitudes
of
des
sharing a
gens.
business
Donc, en
model,
ce qui concerne donc maintenant le partage
people
du
make
business
everyday
model,
traveling,
tous
right?
les jours, les gens effectuent des déplacements,
Going
n'est-ce
to and
pas?
from school,
Ils
going
vont à
to and from
l'école,
work,
ils
etc.,
vont
etc.
au
Too
travail
many
et en
people
reviennent. Il y
are
a
still
de trop
doing that,
nombreuses
going alone
personnes
in their cars.
qui font cela seules dans
We
leur
are
voiture.
providing an incentive, a
Nous,
little
nous
bit similar to
fournissons
frequent
un
flyer
programme
miles that you
comme
can
les
gain
programmes de
on
miles
an airline
sur
going
les
across.
compagnies aériennes.
But we're doing that
Mais nous,
on
les
a
programmes de
very
fidélisation,
local
nous
scale
font
with
à
the
un niveau
everyday
très
travel,
local
and we're
pour
giving the
les
best
déplacements
points
quotidiens.
for when you're
Et nous donnons des
bicycling or
points
doing things that are healthy
aux
for you,
personnes
zero
qui
emission
utilisent
miles.
des vélos
We're
qui
giving for
n'émettent
public
pas
transportation, public
de dioxyde de
transportation
carbone
miles.
et qui
And
utilisent
since you're
les
traveling a
transports en
lot,
commun.
you can really gain a lot there as
Plus
well.
vous voyagez de
So
cette
it's
façon,
really
plus vous
good
gagnez de
for the
points.
individual
C'est
persons
bien
who are
pour la personne
participating.
qui
It's also
participe.
good
C'est
for
bien
existing
également
businesses that are
pour
closed,
les
that have, for
entreprises qui
example,
existent
an
et qui-
organic salad bar
Par exemple, il y
or
a
really good
un bar à salade
a good
bio
piece of meat from Mark and so on,
où vous pouvez
where
aller
you
chez
can
Marc, où vous
incentivize and
mangerez
reward
une bonne viande.
when you have done something good
Et
in
vous
terms
pouvez
of
obtenir ainsi des
transportation, when you
points
have
lorsque vous
changed
êtes
your
bien
behavior in
comporté,
terms of
lorsque vous avez
transportation.
modifié votre
You
changement en
can
termes de
do this.
transport.
And also employers who want to have
Et les
healthier employees
salariés
and
également,
so forth.
les employeurs qui veulent
However,
avoir
the
des
system is
salariés
really
qui sont en
growing
bonne santé. Ça, c'est une
from
bonne chose pour
the
eux.
more that starts to use
Et donc,
public
plus les
transportation,
personnes utilisent les transports en
bikes,
commun,
etc., or
les
ride
vélos
sharing if they have to go
ou
by car,
l'autopartage, le
we're shifting
covoiturage,
part of the economy into that,
eh bien,
while reducing it,
cela
the
permet
pains
en même
and
temps
the
de
financial cash pool that is actually stuck into cars and congestion, which
réduire
nobody
la,
benefits from.
la
So
la-
that's
la
part of the
circulation
logical
et
business model that
réduire tout
CommuteGreener there in
l'amas
the
d'argent qui est
recycled
concentré
areas.
au sein d'une
However,
voiture et dont
the most
personne ne peut
fantastic
profiter.
thing that we're
Et
seeing
donc,
now
davantage de
is
personnes, de
how
parties
new
prenantes en
businesses are
profitent.
created
Et ce qui est
about that.
important, c'est
How
comment
many have
d'autres
heard about
entreprises se sont créées
or
autour de
used
cela. Combien d'entre vous
Spotify?
ont entendu parler de Spotify?
It's a
Ou
music
utilisent
service
Spotify.
where you don't buy a
Vous savez, ce
song,
service de
but you're
musique où vous
actually
n'achetez pas
taking part
la
of it as a
chanson,
service,
mais
music
vous
as a service.
l'utilisez comme un
We actually do
service.
the same a little bit
Eh
with
bien,
the
on
physical
fait la même
transportation.
chose avec le
Spotify has
transport en
grown as
commun.
a business and so
Spotify
on,
est devenu
and it has
une
enabled
grosse
new
entreprise,
businesses
et
making
il y en a
playlists,
d'autres
making
qui
playlists
ont créé d'autres
show
entreprises
up
qui
and
font
so
des
forth.
playlists
What we're seeing around
interagissent
CommuteGreener
avec
is also a
Spotify. Et c'est
number
ce qu'on
of
voit avec
businesses growing up
CommuteGreener.
around us,
Des entreprises se sont
focusing
créées
on
autour de
how
nous,
do we
des activités se sont
distribute
créées.
your tokens, how do we do these things
distribuent
in
des
terms of the
jetons.
transportation market.
Voilà,
That's what I
Marc
wanted
le
to
fait avec
share
ses
a little
jetons
bit
et nous le faisons
on
autrement.
how the business model
Voilà
works
comment je
and
voulais vous montrer que notre
also how you
business
can
model
go on further in
fonctionnait
terms of
et comment on
setting
peut
a target,
l'appliquer
seeing
en
the
fixant
progress
des
and sharing
objectifs, voyant les
experiences.
progrès
And
et
thank you,
partageant
and
des
I'll hand over
expériences. Je vous
to
remercie.
Mark, who will
Je
elaborate
vais
a
donner
little
la
bit further,
parole
also
à Marc,
built on yesterday, if I recall right.
si je me souviens bien, qui va donner un peu plus de détails par rapport à sa présentation.
Thank you, Magnus.
Merci.
Good morning,
Merci,
everyone.
Magnus. Bonjour à tous.
So those of you who were there yesterday
Ceux
morning
d'entre vous qui étaient
will
là
remember
hier
that my
matin,
life
vous
had a
vous
lot
souvenez
of
que
inequality.
je vous disais que dans ma vie,
I
il y
used
avait
to go
beaucoup
to work by
d'inégalités.
helicopter.
J'allais
I used to drive
travailler en
Ferraris,
hélicoptère,
Porsches, BMWs.
je conduisais des Ferrari,
Very
des Porsche, des
unequal with you,
BMW.
right?
C'est très inégal,
Very unfair.
n'est-ce pas, par rapport à vous. C'est
And so that's
injuste.
a realization I had
Eh bien,
when I
là,
was
c'est
at
ce que
the
je me
top of
suis
my
dit
business
lorsque
before, that this
j'étais
was incredibly
tout en haut de mon
unfair.
entreprise avant. Je me
I
disais,
didn't
ça
contribute
est
anything
injuste,
useful
je
to
ne
the world.
contribuais à rien, je
All I
n'apportais
made
rien
was
au
computer
monde.
games.
Tout ce que je faisais, c'était
No
des
use
jeux
there,
vidéo.
right?
C'était pas très
And yet
utile, n'est-ce pas?
somehow the world was rewarding me
Et pourtant,
for
le
that
monde
life.
décerner des
And
prix, me
it really struck me that
remercier pour cette
this
vie
was
que je menais.
incredibly unfair and something
Je
had to
trouvais que c'était
change.
très
So you
inégal,
remember from
très
yesterday, I
injuste.
left
J'ai
my
voulu
business,
que,
I went around the
les
world
choses
looking for
changent,
charities to
comme je vous
help.
l'ai dit, j'ai
and I
voulu
found
changer,
myself in the
j'ai trouvé des
Philippines.
associations caritatives et je me suis
One
retrouvée aux
experience I
Philippines.
had shortly
Une
after
expérience que j'ai
arriving
eue peu après
was
mon
that I was
arrivée,
having a
c'était
pizza in a restaurant
que je mangeais une pizza
with a
dans
group
un
of friends,
restaurant avec un
and
groupe
there was
d'amis.
a group of kids that
Il y
came
avait
past
un
the
groupe
window of the
d'amis
restaurant,
qui,
and they were
un
clearly
groupe de
homeless, they had
personnes
no
qui étaient
shoes,
en
very
dehors du
dirty,
restaurant, ils
and
étaient
one of them
très
was
sales, ils n'avaient pas de
sniffing glue,
chaussures, et l'un
which is a
d'entre
cheap
eux,
drug in the Philippines.
respirait de la colle,
And I
ce
asked
qui
my
est
friend,
une
why do they
drogue
waste their money on
très peu
drugs
chère,
when
et
they're
je leur
so
demandais
poor? Why don't
pourquoi
they use
est-ce
it for
qu'ils
food or clothes or
ils achètent
something?
de la drogue avec
And
le peu
my
d'argent
friend
qu'ils ont, au
explained
lieu
to me
d'acheter
that this
des-
drug
des habits ou de
was
la
cheaper
nourriture.
than
Et
rice.
mon ami
And that
m'a
when he couldn't
expliqué que
afford
cette drogue était
to
moins
buy
chère
rice
que le
to
riz, il
eat,
pouvait
that's
pas
when they
acheter de
would
riz,
buy the drug.
et c'est pour ça
And
qu'ils
this
achetaient de la
amazed me
drogue.
that in the place
Ça
where
m'a
we were,
vraiment
we were in a restaurant, a
surpris.
whole
On
chain
était
of
dans un
restaurants, so a lot of
restaurant,
people
dans une
gobbling up
chaîne,
food,
il y avait
and
beaucoup de
others
monde,
really
tout le monde
starving on the other side of the
mangeait, et
window.
juste de l'autre côté
And so we
de la
quickly paid our
fenêtre, il y
bill,
avait
we
des gens
went
qui mouraient de
outside,
faim.
and the kids were
Et
all
donc,
sitting on the
on est
ground, and we
sortis,
asked
les
them, are you
enfants,
hungry? And they jumped up straight
étaient
away,
dehors, et ils
yes,
ont
we're
dit,
hungry.
J'ai faim.
So we said, we'd like to get you some
Et
food, where
donc,
would you
je leur ai
like to
dit,
eat?
Oui, ok,
And they
vous
had a
voulez
little
manger.
talk amongst themselves,
Et
and they
alors, ils ont
decided that
discuté,
the
et puis,
Filipino
ils
equivalent
ont
of
dit que
McDonald's was the best food they
l'équivalent
could
philippin
imagine.
de,
It's called
McDonald's,
Jollibee, so we said, okay,
c'était
let's go.
Jollibee, c'est
There
ce
was
qu'ils
one a few
préfèrent.
meters
Alors,
away.
d'accord, on y va.
We went to the restaurant.
On est allé à ce
In the
restaurant.
Philippines, there are security
Philippines,
guards on
il
the
y a
doors
des,
of all the restaurants
officiers de
to protect the
sécurité en
hamburgers
dehors des
from the poor
restaurants
people.
pour que les hamburgers
So we
soient
couldn't get them
protégés des
inside
pauvres. Et
at
donc
first.
on n'a pas pu rentrer.
It took us
évidemment, dans
20
ce restaurant.
pesos to get them
On a
past
dû
the guard.
payer 20 pesos
I'm not usually in favor of corruption,
à
but
l'agent
on
de
that one
sécurité.
occasion,
En général, je
we
ne
were
comprends pas les
able
gens,
to
mais
get
là,
the
j'avoue.
people inside.
Et donc, ça
And
nous a
so we
permis
brought
de
them their
faire
meal,
rentrer, ces enfants.
and they
On leur a
started to
acheté
eat
un repas.
what they had. And when they'd eaten about
Ils ont
half the food,
commencé à manger
they
et
started to wrap
arrivé à la
up what
moitié
was
de leur
left.
repas,
And I
ils
thought
ont-
maybe they have small stomachs because they don't eat very often. Maybe they're
Ils ont
full.
laissé ce
And
qui
so I
ne voulait
asked
plus, je me suis
her-
dit,
I
ils
asked
ont-
one of
ils n'ont
them,
pas
"Are you
très faim,
full?"
ils ont des petits
And she said,
estomacs, et je leur ai demandé, bah,
no,
alors,
I'm
vous
still
êtes des filles?
hungry,
Elle dit, non,
but I
j'ai
have a mother
toujours
at
faim,
home
mais
and a
j'ai
brother,
une mère chez moi,
and I want to share
j'ai un
this with them.
frère, et je veux partager
And I was
ce
so
repas
amazed
avec
that
eux.
even though she was still hungry, she
Et
was thinking of her
vraiment,
family.
ça m'a surpris. Elle avait
And she was
faim, mais elle
prepared to
pensait
take it
à
and
sa
share it.
famille, et elle voulait
And I
partager
asked her,
ce
and then
repas,
I
le
noticed
prendre
another
chez
girl
elle.
was
Et
crying.
partager. Une autre
And I
fille
asked her, why are
pleurait.
you
Je lui disais,
crying?
pourquoi tu pleures?
And she said,
Elle m'a dit,
I've lived on the streets of
eh
Manila
bien,
all my
ça
life,
fait- j'ai
and
toujours
nobody's
habité dans
ever
les rues
once
de
bought me a
Manille,
meal.
et personne ne m'a jamais
and I
acheté un
don't
repas.
understand.
Et je
Why are
comprends
you being
pas.
kind to me today?
Pourquoi est-ce que vous êtes si gentil avec moi
And
aujourd'hui?
it turned out she thought I wanted to
bien,
rape her.
Et
That
elle
was the
pensait que
only
je voulais la
reason she could
violer et
think
que
of
c'est pour
why
ça
somebody
que
would buy her food. She
j'étais,
thought I
je voulais
wanted
lui
to
acheter
sleep
un
with her.
repas. Et elle pensait que je
And
voulais
as I looked
coucher
at
avec
her,
elle.
seeing the tears coming down her cheek,
Et
it
donc,
suddenly hit me for the very
en
first
voyant
time
les larmes couler de ses
that
yeux,
that
ça
could
m'a
have been
vraiment
me.
frappé. Ça aurait
If
pu
I'd
être
been
moi
born
à
to a
sa
poor
place.
family in the Philippines
Si j'étais
instead of a
née
poor
dans
family
une
in
famille
England where I
pauvre
came from,
aux Philippines
then I
plutôt
would
qu'en
still be there on
Angleterre,
the streets.
je serais là,
And
dans les rues, à Manille.
Europe used to be a continent of
L'Europe,
slums. Europe used to
Eh
be
bien,
like the
l'Europe avant,
Philippines,
c'était
like
comme les
India,
Philippines,
like
comme
China.
l'Inde, comme la Chine.
And all of us from
Et
Europe,
tous,
we
nous
benefited because
ici,
100 years ago,
Européens,
150 years ago,
nous,
somebody made a
aujourd'hui,
decision in our
quelqu'un a pris une
towns
décision.
to help the poor.
Quelqu'un,
Somebody made a
à ce
decision
moment-là, il y a des siècles, a pris une
to
décision
change the way that
d'aider les
things
pauvres, de
was.
changer
And
les
this is why I
choses.
believe in business,
c'est
because the
grâce à
town
ça
I
que nous
was
sommes
born
là
in
aujourd'hui.
England,
Et
it's
c'est
a
pour ça que
town
je crois aux
called
entreprises.
Bradford.
Je suis
It
née
was
à Bradford,
entirely
en
built by one
Angleterre,
man
et, cette ville
who
a
was
été
the biggest
construite par un
factory
seul
owner
homme
at that time, and he
qui
built
possédait
houses,
les
he
plus
built
grandes
schools, he
entreprises,
built
la plus grosse
playgrounds
usine.
and things
Il a
for his factory
construit des
workers and their
écoles, des
families.
logements
And this was the
pour
first
les
time
familles
that a
des-
business
des
owner in
ouvriers. Et
England
c'est la
did that.
première fois qu'un
And
chef
so
d'entreprise faisait
I
cela en
believe that
Angleterre.
business is
Et
more
donc, je
powerful than
pense
government.
que les
Business employs more people
sont
than
plus
government. It
puissants
has
que
more
le
money than
gouvernement,
government.
que les
The
gens,
way
les
that business
individus
is
ont
done
plus d'argent que
decides what kind of society we live in.
Et c'est à nous de décider
And
dans
so
quelle
for those of
société
us
on
that come
veut
from
vivre.
Europe,
Et donc,
it
nous,
seems
qui venons d'Europe,
obvious that there should
eh bien,
be
pour moi, c'était évident
equality.
que l'égalité
But in countries like the
doit
Philippines, like
exister
China,
partout.
like
Dans des
India,
pays comme
like many
la
others,
Chine, l'Inde, les
it's still
Philippines,
not
de
yet
nombreux autres pays, eh
there.
bien, ce
But
n'est
it's
pas le
possible to
cas.
bring this change.
Mais on peut
And so in
apporter
the
ce
Philippines,
changement.
I
Et donc, au
live there now.
Philippines,
I've lived there for 11 years. The
ça
reason
fait
I live
maintenant
there
11
is
ans
I really
que
fell in
j'y
love with
habite,
this movement
et je suis
called
vraiment
charismatic,
tombée
which
amoureuse
was started
d'un
by
mouvement
a
qui
guy called
s'appelle
Tony Melotto,
charismatic,
who's
qui
here
est
in the
Tony
audience,
Melotto,
the guy with the white hair, the only
avec
guy
les
with white
cheveux
hair, I
blancs,
think.
a créé ce
So this was
mouvement.
started in the Philippines. They
Cette personne qui a les cheveux
transformed the
blancs, d'ailleurs,
slums into beautiful, peaceful
donc,
communities. In the
cette
past
organisation
11 years, they've been
permet
able to
d'améliorer
build
la
housing for
situation dans les
250,000
communautés.
people.
et a aidé
in the Philippines. And more than 1 million
250 000
people have gone through and
personnes
been touched
aux
by their
Philippines.
programs.
Il y a 1 million
And
de
today,
personnes qui ont
we're building a
participé
movement
à ce
to try and
programme.
raise
Aujourd'hui,
500
on crée
million
un
social
mouvement pour
entrepreneurs.
aider
Because we see that that's
500
the way
000
to really
entrepreneurs.
revolutionize poverty,
Et c'est
to
la façon
eradicate
de
poverty
révolutionner
through
la
the
pauvreté,
way that business is
d'éradiquer la
done, but in a
pauvreté.
new way.
De la-
And so we're trying to build a
grâce à
movement
de
to
nouvelles
raise these
entreprises.
social
Nous
entrepreneurs.
essayons
How many of you here are
d'aider
students?
les
There are a lot of young
entrepreneurs
people here.
Et ici, combien d'entre vous êtes
How many of you are
étudiants?
business students?
Parmi les étudiants, combien d'entre vous
How many of
avez
you
une
really
activité
believe that when you graduate, you're going to
Est-ce que vous
start your
pensez
own
que quand
business?
vous allez être diplômé, vous allez créer votre propre entreprise?
There's something
Combien
wrong with
d'entre
our
vous pensent
education.
que vous allez créer votre propre entreprise
Why are you
en sortant de
studying
vos
business
études?
if you
Alors,
don't want
pourquoi
to
vous
start your own?
étudiez
Maybe it's out of fear.
l'entreprise, le commerce, si
I
jamais
just
vous
want
ne
to
voulez pas
tell
créer
you,
votre entreprise?
you
Peut-être
don't
la
need to
peur.
know anything
Vous n'avez
to
pas
start your
besoin-
own
Vous
business.
n'avez pas besoin de connaître
It's
tout
about
sur le
your
monde de
character,
l'entreprise pour
not about your knowledge.
créer une
When I went
entreprise.
into
C'est à
computer
propos
games, I didn't know
il
anything
s'agit
about
d'être-
computer games. I couldn't program a single line of code.
Quand
And
j'ai
yet my
commencé avec
business
le jeu
became the
vidéo,
first
je ne savais
dot-com
pas
business
coder.
on the London
Et
Stock
pourtant,
Exchange.
je suis devenue la
In the
plus grosse
Philippines,
entreprise
Tony
à
Melotto
la
didn't know
bourse
anything
de Londres
about
sur les
community
jeux vidéo.
development, never
Tony
studied
Melotto
it,
ne
never read a
connaissait
book
rien sur
about
le
it, but went
développement
out
social,
and
mais
talked to the people and met the people.
théoriquement,
And
mais
today
il est
has the
sorti de
biggest
chez lui, il a
nation-building
parlé aux
movement.
gens, et aujourd'hui,
I think
son
worldwide.
mouvement est une des
The
plus
company I
grosses
now run, Human
organisations
Nature,
qui
is
aide les gens.
natural and organic cosmetics.
Notre
I don't use lipstick.
organisation Human
I won't
Nature est
admit
une
it
entreprise
anyway.
cosmétique.
But
Je n'utilise pas de rouge à lèvres.
I know nothing about it.
J'en
And
connais
yet,
rien
Human
en rouge à
Nature has
lèvres. Et
become the
pourtant,
biggest
Human
social
Nature
enterprise in
est
the
devenue la
Philippines.
plus
We now
grosse
have about
entreprise
300
sociale aux
employees.
Philippines, avec
We have
300
70,000 dealers.
salariés.
And we're starting to
1000
expand into other countries. I'm hoping that we will become the
4000,
first multinational social enterprise. Because when you hear the word multinational, what
Nous
comes
sommes
to
une
mind?
multinationale, mais qu'est-ce qui nous vient à l'esprit quand on parle
Anyone?
de multinationale?
What
Hein,
words
quels
do you
sont
think
les
of when you
mots
hear
qui
the
vous
word
viennent à l'esprit quand
multinational?
vous entendez multinationale?
Sorry? Corporation? Many people think of greed,
De nombreuses personnes
tax
pensent à
avoidance,
avarice et
things like
évasion
this. It doesn't have a
fiscale.
very positive
Ça n'a pas
connotation
de
in
connotation
most
très
people's
positive
minds,
quand
the
on
word
parle de
multinational.
dans la plupart du temps.
But business can be a force for
Mais
good.
les entreprises
I
peuvent
believe
être
that
une
very
force du
passionately.
bien.
I am a
Je suis
product
profondément
of
convaincue par
one
cela. Je suis le
businessman's decision
produit
to
de
help
la
his poor
décision
factory
d'un homme
workers in my
d'entreprise
town 100
d'aider,
years ago. Because he
les
made that decision, I was
personnes
given
de sa ville il y
opportunity
a 100 ans,
100
parce
years
que
later.
cette
I
personne
believe in the
leur a
power
donné
of business to do
l'opportunité
good,
aux gens
if
de
only people have the
s'améliorer.
courage.
Il faut avoir du
And that's
courage.
why those of you who are
C'est
studying business,
ceux d'entre
I
vous
want to
qui étudient
encourage
le
you.
commerce, je veux vous
Think
encourager.
hard about starting your own.
Réfléchissez à la-
Don't make a decision out of
créer
fear.
votre propre entreprise.
Give it a
N'ayez pas
try.
peur.
Give yourself 2 or 3
Essayez.
years. If
Donnez-vous
it doesn't
2-3
work
ans,
out,
et si ça ne marche
you've
pas,
lost nothing
eh
and
bien,
you've
vous
gained a
n'aurez
lot
rien
of
perdu et
experience.
vous aurez gagné beaucoup
But
d'expérience.
what the world needs
Mais ce
are
dont le monde a
courageous
besoin,
people
ce sont des
who are
personnes
willing to make
courageuses
put a stake in the ground.
Veulent
And so
mettre,
in the Philippines, Human Nature, my
qui veulent
business,
aider
is,
concrètement.
like I said, it's
Et
the
donc,
largest
aux
social
Philippines, comme je vous l'ai
enterprise.
dit, c'est la plus grande entreprise
But
sociale aux
we need
Philippines.
hundreds of human natures for the face of poverty to change.
Et
And so we're
il
trying
nous
to
faut
create an
encore de
ecosystem for
nombreuses
other social
entreprises à la façon
entrepreneurs.
pour que les
So we have
inégalités
everything
soient
from
éradiquées.
people
On a
making
besoin
chocolate,
d'entrepreneurs sociaux,
people
de
making
personnes qui
iced
font du
tea,
chocolat,
people making
du
handbags,
iced tea,
printing businesses
des sacs à
that were
main,
all started by
de
people
l'impression.
about your age or
Ce
even
sont des
younger.
personnes qui
20
peuvent
to
avoir votre âge
25.
ou plus jeunes, même
And these
20,
are all
25
starting to
ans.
thrive
Et ces
and blossom
personnes-là, aux
and flourish. You
Philippines, nous
don't
avons
need to
aidé,
know anything about business to
commencent
start
à avoir
one.
des
You
entreprises
don't
qui
even
gagnent de
need
l'argent
money.
et vous n'avez pas besoin de
Some of these
savoir
businesses
beaucoup
were
de choses, vous n'avez
started
pas
with
besoin
50
d'argent.
euros,
Certaines
80
entreprises ont commencé avec
euros. One
50,
started by a Frenchman. His name is
50
Fabien.
euros. Une
He's
entreprise a
from
été créée
Normandy.
par
He's been in
Fabien,
the
il vient de
Philippines now for 3
Normandie.
years. He
Ça fait
started
3
a
ans
toy
qu'il est aux
business with
Philippines.
80
Il a
euros.
commencé
And yet he's already
une
sold
entreprise de
35,000
création de
toys
jouets avec
and he's on
80
his way
euros.
to becoming successful.
Et aujourd'hui,
Don't let
la
the world tell you
réussite,
you cannot do it.
est très proche pour lui. Donc,
I
ne
had
vous
no
dites pas que vous ne
education. I
pouvez
didn't
pas le
even
faire.
finish high
Je
school.
suis pas allé,
And yet I had a
je n'ai
firm
pas fait
belief
d'études supérieures, je n'ai même pas
that God would
fini
use my
le
life for
lycée,
something good.
mais je pensais que
And so I had the courage to
je
start.
devais faire quelque chose de
So,
bien sur cette
What we're
planète.
doing with
Et
social
donc, j'ai eu
enterprise in the
tout
Philippines,
simplement le
first of
courage de
all,
commencer.
we're trying to
Aux Philippines, ce que nous essayons de
change
faire,
how
c'est
people think about
de
social
changer
enterprise. Mostly when they think of social
la
enterprise,
perception de
it's a
l'entreprise sociale.
pity
Lorsqu'on pense de
purchase.
l'entreprise sociale,
You
on
buy
pense
something
que
made by a social
c'est
enterprise because
faire
you want to
un acte
help.
caritatif
But you don't really really expect what you buy to be any good.
Mais on,
If it's made by the poorest of the
on se dit
poor,
que si
it's
c'est
going to
fait
be
par les
rubbish, right?
pauvres, de toute façon,
But no,
ce
we're
produit
trying
ne
to
va
show
pas
that
être excellent.
something
mais
made
c'est
by
pas
the
pour
poor
cela
can
qu'on
be
le
world
fait.
class.
Eh bien
So
non,
we really
nous, on veut
focus on
montrer que ce qui
quality.
est fait par les
And that's
pauvres
why
peut
we're
être un
able
objet
to
de
compete
qualité,
with
de
multinationals like
première
Unilever,
catégorie,
Procter &
de
Gamble,
première classe,
Avon, these big companies in the
haut de gamme.
Philippines, because our products are
Et
equally good, if not
nos
better.
produits aux Philippines
So a social
sont
enterprise has
tout
to be
aussi
the
bons que
best.
ceux des entreprises traditionnelles.
And
Donc une
next,
entreprise sociale
we're
doit faire de
changing
bons produits.
employment policies.
Deuxièmement, il
One
faut
of
changer
the
les
biggest
politiques d'emploi, d'embauche.
pillars
L'un
of
des
my
piliers
company
de notre
is that we have a
entreprise,
no firing policy.
c'est que nous ne
No
licencions
firing.
pas de
I've never
licenciement.
met a single business person
Je
who
ne
thinks
connais
this
pas
is a
une
good idea.
entreprise qui pense que c'est une bonne
Everyone
idée.
thinks this is a lousy idea,
Tout le monde pense que c'est
that
une
we will
idée
be taken
idiote.
advantage of.
Mais
That if people know
nous,
they're not going to be
pour nous,
fired,
c'est
why will
voici.
they turn up at work? But it's not true.
Certains
People
disent
don't
que
want
si
to
les
be
gens savent qu'ils vont pas être
parasites.
licenciés, ils vont pas
People want to contribute. People
ils
want
vont
to
pas
be
venir le
valuable.
matin travailler.
People
Ben
want
non,
to be
au
part
contraire.
of something that
Les
works.
gens veulent se sentir
And
appréciés. Ils veulent
after 6
être dans
years,
une entreprise
out of
qui
300
fonctionne. Et après
employees,
6
I
ans,
can think of 2
300
or 3
salariés,
people that
et je connais
abuse
que 2 ou
that no
3
firing
personnes qui
policy.
ont,
But I have 300
abusé
people
de
who
ce système.
appreciate it.
Mais le reste,
When you're working with the
les centaines
poor,
de personnes à
who
l'apprécient.
all their
Lorsqu'on
life
travaille
they've been
avec
told
les
they're
pauvres,
rubbish, they're
qui
nothing, they're
toute leur vie ont
useless.
entendu qu'ils
When you
étaient
start to work with
inutiles,
those
qu'ils ne servaient à
people
rien, qu'ils étaient
and
nuls,
you
eh bien,
say
quand
on
on
the day they
travaille
begin,
avec
I
ces
will not give
personnes,
up on you.
et vous
No
leur dites,
matter
moi,
what
je vais pas
mistake
vous
you make, your
abandonner,
family
quelles
will
que
be
soient
secure.
vos erreurs, votre famille
When you
sera
say
en
this to
sécurité.
people,
Lorsqu'on
you
dit
get
ça
their
à ces
loyalty,
gens,
you get their
ils,
commitment,
ils
100%
s'engagent
respect.
vis-à-vis de vous, de votre
And this is
entreprise,
what
ils vous respectent.
brings out the best in them.
Et c'est grâce
When
à
you're
cela
willing to
qu'on
take a
arrive
risk on
à obtenir
people,
le meilleur d'eux-mêmes.
You bring out the good in them.
Vous
And
faites
so
ressentir ce qui est bon en eux.
it's all too easy for business owners
C'est trop
when you make a
facile
mistake
pour
to
les chefs
fire someone
d'entreprise
and run your corporation on
de
fear.
licencier quelqu'un
But
lorsqu'ils
if you
font
want
une
to
erreur.
really bring out the good in people, you
Mais
want
si
to
on veut
change
faire
the world,
ressortir le
you have to
bon
change your
des
business
gens
first.
et de changer le monde,
And
il
take a
faut
risk.
il faut
And I've
avoir ce
seen
genre
that
de
taking a risk
politique
on
et
people
prendre
really
des
pays
risques.
off. Like
Moi,
Mark,
je prends des risques
the
avec
people he's working with,
des
drug addicts.
personnes
Who would think that they
qui
could
vraiment
change?
donnent quelque chose de bien,
But
comme
it
Marc
really
avec les
happens.
toxicomanes, eh bien,
So
il a
no
réussi
firing
à faire
policy.
quelque
A
chose
bad leader will blame his
d'intéressant.
followers. If your boss fires you,
Si
it's
votre,
probably his fault.
Manager vous licencie, c'est
Either you're
sûrement
not
sa faute.
trained, it's his
Ça veut
fault.
dire que vous
You're
n'êtes
not
pas bien
motivated or
formé.
inspired,
Si vous-
it's
c'est
his
pas-
fault.
Si vous n'êtes pas motivé,
Maybe you were
c'est sa
hired
faute
for the
aussi.
wrong job, you didn't
Peut-être
have the
qu'il vous a
skills.
recruté
It's still his
pour,
fault.
Le mauvais
So if
poste,
I'm the
vous n'avez
boss,
pas
why
les
would
bonnes
I fire
compétences,
you
c'est
for
sa
my
faute.
mistake?
Alors pourquoi est-ce que je devrais vous
So
licencier
you have to
alors
have
que c'est ma
courage
faute?
to do things a different way.
Il faut vraiment avoir du
Secondly,
courage
in
pour faire les
our
choses
social
différemment.
enterprise, we don't care about the
Deuxièmement,
minimum wage.
Nous,
Because we
pour
know
chez
that
nous, il
in
n'y a
the
pas de salaire
Philippines,
minimum,
the
parce
minimum
que
wage is not enough.
aux Philippines, de toute façon,
And
le
so
salaire
what we do
minimum ne
instead
sert à
is
rien,
we
il est
look
trop
at how
faible.
much
Donc,
is
nous
the cost of
regardons
living.
quel est
And
le
then that
coût
is
de
what
la
we
vie.
pay.
Et
So
c'est
today we
qu'on-
pay almost
c'est
double
notre-
the minimum wage
c'est
in
à
the
partir de cette
Philippines
base
because
qu'on
we know that the
rémunère
minimum
les
wage is
gens.
not
Et
enough
pour nous,
for
à
dignified
présent,
life.
c'est à peu près 2
We
fois
work
le
with a
salaire
lot of
minimum,
farming
parce que le salaire
communities
minimum aux Philippines est
in the
vraiment trop bas.
Philippines. So
On
we
travaille
train
avec
them
des
how to
communautés
grow
agricoles,
crops. We give them the
les
equipment
formons,
to process essential oils,
pour,
which have high value,
la
and then we buy the
culture des
produce.
sols,
But
et
when we
nous
buy the
achetons les
produce,
produits.
we don't care about the
Mais
market
lorsque nous achetons
price.
les produits, on
Instead,
se
we
fiche
look
du
at
prix du marché.
how
Au
many
contraire,
days is
nous
it going to
regardons
take you
combien de
of
temps ça vous
working
a pris
to produce that crop?
pour obtenir
How
ce
much does it
produit.
cost you to send your kids to
Combien ça
school?
vous coûte
How much does it cost you to
d'envoyer
get
vos
some
enfants à
healthcare?
l'école,
That is the price we will pay.
D'aller chez le
for the
docteur. Eh bien
produce.
voilà, c'est à partir de cela
So
qu'on
if you're a
rémunère
farmer
les
in
gens
the
et
Philippines, you're going to
c'est
be
ça qui
poor
fixe
for
le
the
prix
rest
du
of your
produit.
life because all the money is taken by the middlemen,
Aux
the
Philippines,
traders.
tout
But in
tout
social
l'argent
enterprise,
est
you have to
gardé
look
par
at it
les
differently. You
intermédiaires.
create a new business
Et
plan.
nous,
How
on
much do you
travaille
need?
directement avec les
And then can we
agriculteurs.
afford
De
to
combien
pay
avez-vous
that?
besoin?
Yes.
Et c'est cela que
So
nous
that is the
payons.
price you will get.
Alors voilà, ça
So
c'est le
it's a
prix des
total
produits.
revolution
C'est comme ça qu'on
in
fixe le
thinking.
prix. C'est une
And then lastly, there are so
façon de
many
penser, un mode de pensée
uh,
révolutionnaire.
institutional
de
ways
nombreuses
that keep people in
entreprises
poverty. What we found was,
maintiennent
even though
les
we
gens
were
dans
paying our
la
people a high
pauvreté.
salary,
Parfois même si le salaire
some of
était
them still
élevé,
had no money.
certaines personnes
And we
n'ont
couldn't
toujours pas
understand it
d'argent, et
until
on
we found
comprenait
out
pas
that there were loan
vraiment
sharks
pourquoi.
coming to the door of our company. Every day that there was a new employee, at the end of that person's first day at work, the loan sharks would come to them and say, hey, you've got a
En
great
fait, on a
job.
compris
They have a no firing policy. You're here for life. Why
de
don't you buy your
nombreuses
mom a new
personnes
TV?
Proposer des crédits
I
aux
can lend you
personnes
the
qui
money.
venaient,
And so these people
travailler
would
chez nous.
lend
Regardez,
money
il y a pas
at a
de
very
politique de
high rate of
licenciement, vous allez
interest. And
gagner
in the
de l'argent,
Philippines, the way
et
that
ils leur
it works
fournissaient
is
un crédit
they
à des
take
taux
your
extrêmement
ATM
élevés pour
card.
acheter une
They
carte,
take your
une
carte
voiture à leur mère.
bancaire.
Et
And so,
ils leur fournissaient les
at
cartes
the end of the
bancaires
week,
pour qu'ils
when
aillent
you get
retirer
your
de l'argent au
salary,
distributeur de billets.
the
Et donc,
loan
à la fin
shark
de la semaine,
decides how much
ces
of your
personnes
salary
qui
you will
vendaient des
get.
crédits,
So we had one woman, she has 6
prenaient,
children. She
tout
was
l'argent
earning
de ces
about
personnes. Une femme
12
qui avait
euros a
6
day from
enfants,
us,
elle
which is
gagnait
almost double the
12
minimum
euros
wage there.
par jour, qui est 2
And
fois
yet
le
the
salaire
loan shark,
minimum là-bas.
she
Et
took a
la
loan.
personne
The
qui
loan
lui
shark
faisait
was
un
giving her
crédit
11 euros per week
lui donnait 11
to live on
euros
for
par
herself
semaine
and her 6 children.
pour elle et
So
pour ses
every
6
week,
enfants.
the debt would go up
Donc, chaque jour,
because she
la
couldn't
dette
live on that. So she
augmentait.
had to borrow more and
Et
more
donc,
from
elle
this
devait
guy.
emprunter de plus en plus
And so when we
de
found
la-
out what was
cette
happening,
personne, et lorsqu'on a
Turned out about
compris
30 of our
ce qui se
people
passait, que
were
ça,
in this trap. And so we
touché
gathered the
environ
loan sharks
une trentaine de
together,
personnes qui étaient
and we
prises dans
said
ce
to them,
piège, dans ce cercle
thank you
vicieux.
for helping our people. We know you're just trying to make
On
their
est allé
lives
voir ces
better,
personnes, ces requins de
but
crédit,
they're
comme on
clearly
les
not
appelle.
able to handle
On
their
est allé les
finances.
voir,
We've
on a dit
cancelled all of their
merci de
ATM
s'occuper
cards.
d'eux, mais nous avons
And, I
annulé
want
leur
to make
carte
you an offer.
bancaire. Et je vais vous
I will
proposer
pay off
quelque chose.
all the principal
Je
of what
vais
you lent them today,
vous,
but none of the
rembourser
interest.
tout ce qu'ils ont,
If you let go of the interest,
tout ce que
we'll
vous leur
repay
avez
you
donné, mais
today.
sans les intérêts.
If you want to collect the interest,
Si
you
vous
have to
voulez
keep
récupérer les
pursuing
intérêts,
them, but they have no more
eh bien,
ATM card. We're just
vous
releasing their
devrez,
salary every day by cash.
Allez
in
les voir,
cash.
continuez à les voir tous
So
les jours,
all
mais
of
ils
the
n'ont
loan
plus de carte
sharks
de
took the
crédit pour
deal.
vous donner de l'argent.
And we were able to
Donc,
free our
tous ces
people from
personnes,
that
tous
trap.
ces requins
And
de
word went
crédit ont
around that
accepté qu'on
don't
les
lend
paye
anything to
immédiatement
human
le
nature
jour où
employees.
on
You won't
est allé
earn
les voir.
anything from that.
Et ils sont partis.
And so there's institutionalized
Et
poverty.
donc,
So
il y a une
the
pauvreté
point I'm trying to make is
institutionnalisée.
for social
Ce que je voulais
enterprise
dire,
to
c'est
really
que
lift
pour que
people out of
l'entreprise
poverty, to
sociale
change equality,
permette aux gens
it's
de
not enough
sortir
to
de la
pay a
pauvreté,
good
de
salary.
réduire les
You have to look
inégalités,
at what
il ne
is
suffit
really
pas
keeping these people
de
poor.
donner un bon salaire. Il
And
faut
so
voir
just to
qu'est-ce
end,
qui maintient
I
les
want
gens
to
dans
just
cette
remind
pauvreté.
you,
Donc, je voulais vous
when I
rappeler
started
la
my
chose
computer
suivante.
game
Lorsque j'ai
business, I knew nothing about
commencé mon
computer games or
entreprise de
programming.
jeux vidéo, je ne connaissais
When
rien
Tony Melotto
aux jeux
started
vidéo
Garwood
et à la
Killinger, he knew nothing
programmation.
about
Lorsque Tony
community
Melotto a
development.
commencé, il ne connaissait rien
When
au
I started
développement
Human Nature, I
social.
knew nothing
Lorsqu'on a
about
commencé
lipstick.
Human Nature, je connaissais rien au rouge à
And
lèvres.
yet,
Et pourtant,
we had commitment.
on était
We had
engagés
determination
on était
to change the
déterminés
face of poverty.
à changer
And I want to
le
encourage
visage de la
you, especially
pauvreté. Et
those
je
of
vous
you who are
encourage,
students,
vous,
go
notamment
out
vous
and
qui êtes
start your own
étudiants,
businesses. Don't let
allez-y,
anybody
créez
tell
votre
you it cannot be
entreprise.
done. There's only one
N'écoutez
rule
personne qui
if
vous
you want
dise
to
que vous ne pouvez
succeed
pas
in your
y
business. And I
arriver.
promise you,
Une
if you
règle.
follow this rule, you will
Et si
succeed.
vous la suivez, vous
The
réussirez.
rule is very simple.
C'est très
Don't
simple.
quit.
N'abandonnez jamais.
Don't quit. Don't
N'abandonnez
even
pas.
think about quitting.
N'y pensez
And
même
if
pas,
you
n'y
follow that
songez
rule, no
pas.
matter what
Et
problems
si
come
vous
along,
suivez cette
you will
règle,
eventually
quels que
get
soient
there.
les problèmes, vous
And
y
so this world
arriverez.
can be a better place. The way to change it is to
Le
first of all
monde peut
change
être un
our
monde meilleur,
businesses.
on peut changer, mais
And I
tout
look
d'abord,
forward
il
to
faut
the world
changer la
that you're
façon
going to
dont
create.
nous faisons des affaires. Et je suis impatient de vous voir alors.
Can I have you? Perfect. They are really working very much in harmony now.
Nous travaillons en
I
harmonie.
want to make sure
Donc,
we
je
don't miss to
voudrais,
learn a
être
little bit
sûr
more
que
about the
nous
mechanics
apprenions
of your
le
business,
mécanisme de votre
Mark.
entreprise, Marc.
Because you mentioned
Parce que vous avez
your
mentionné-
restaurant,
vous
you
avez
mentioned
mentionné
about the
votre
tokens
restaurant,
program,
vous avez parlé,
but
du
the
programme,
purpose, one
mais
of the goals of
l'objectif,
this session
un des objectifs de
is
cette session,
not
ce n'est pas
is to go beyond
c'est
really
d'aller
the doing
au-delà
good. Is
de
to
le
show
faire
that
bien. C'est
the
simplement
business
de montrer,
model is
que ce modèle
profitable
commercial
company
est
which is
rentable,
focused
c'est une
on
société rentable qui met
succeeding
en
as a company,
exergue
as a
le
business,
succès
but
de
also
l'entreprise, mais également
resolving certain social issues or
résoudre
addressing
certains
issues
problèmes
of inequality.
sociaux,
And
certains
these
problèmes
two have to go
d'inégalité
hand
sociale.
in hand.
Et je crois que tout
So
cela
in your
doit aller de
case,
pair.
I
Dans
know
votre
that
cas, je sais
your
pertinemment
restaurant
bien
is
que
one of these
votre
models.
restaurant
And
est
it's
un de ces
useful
modèles.
for all of us
Et
to
c'est
hear
utile
the
pour
mechanism.
nous. Nous
What is the
devrions
algorithm
connaître
of
le
this kind of
mécanisme. Quel est
social
l'algorithme
enterprise success in a
du
system
succès de cette
which
entreprise sociale dans un
doesn't
système
follow
qui
really
ne
the
suit pas
rules of
vraiment les
addressing
règles.
social issues. This is a very
Donc, voilà, je pense
ruthless
que
competition out there
c'est,
with
quelque
companies
chose de
which
très
are focused
rude
only on the bottom
pour
line.
les entreprises
So how you
qui
do
met
it?
en exergue simplement le
Very
bottom
simple
line.
question, right?
Oui, c'est une question très simple.
So it's very complex, but also
Alors,
it's
c'est
easy
très
at the same
complexe,
time.
mais c'est,
The
facile.
restaurant business in
Le
particular, your number one
restaurant
thing that you
en
want to do is
général,
ensure
ce
that
que
you're
vous
not
voulez
wasting
faire, c'est
anything.
être sûr
You're not
que
wasting
vous ne
time,
gaspillez
you're not wasting
rien,
food.
pas gaspiller le
So
temps,
to
la
endeavor to do that, when I
nourriture. Et
took
pour
over the
essayer de
butcher
faire
shop,
ça,
I created a
lorsque
butcher
j'ai
shop,
créé cela,
a
j'ai
diner,
créé,
and then
un
also a social
restaurant,
program that
un
feeds
programme
people in the
social
SROs like
qui,
Mike
pourrait,
almost 800 meals a day, every
qui
day.
pourrait, donner,
So
des
those are meals they weren't
repas,
getting before, which is part of the
ces
social
repas,
piece,
ils
but
ne le
also very
recevaient
much
pas
part of our
avant,
business
mais donc
model and
ça
why
fait
it's
partie de
successful.
notre modèle et
I
ça
bring in an entire
permet
animal.
le succès.
That animal is rendered
Donc,
to be sold in the butcher shop.
donc,
After a
ces
few
repas
days, if certain
pouvaient
pieces do
être
not,
vendus,
the
chez
menu
le
is
boucher.
designed
Et
specifically
le
to use
menu est
everything that comes into the
conçu,
butcher shop.
particulièrement
So it goes
pour
into the
tout ce
diner,
qui
as
vient,
fresh as it would be if it was coming from a supplier.
qui vient de
It's
chez
then
le
cooked off.
Donc,
If that
ensuite,
does
c'est
not
cuit.
sell at that
Et
point,
s'il
we
n'est
work
pas
with over
vendu,
3 dozen
alors
agencies
nous
that religiously need food.
donner,
So we'll either
cela
donate
à-
or roll it into a larger
nous
part of our
allons
meal
le
program,
donner, ou
which
nous
is
allons
also a
l'offrir à des
break-even
programmes
piece.
d'alimentation.
So
Et ça,
instead
je
of
crois que c'est
wastage
très,
and
très bien.
calculating
Au
wasted
lieu
labor or
de-
wasted
de
hours,
gaspiller
all of that time is
tout
spent
ce temps
making sure that the product
est
itself
utilisé
is
pour
being
être sûr
used
que le
to the
produit
best of its
lui-même est
ability and is
utilisé au
profitable.
mieux
The part that we also discuss within that is that meal program goes out to the SROs, to those hotels, and it's like outreach. They become trusting of our business, they understand who we are and what we're doing, and we offer them an opportunity to do a job. We work with a lot of people who have developmental disabilities or barriers. And when we say barriers, we mean everything. Drug addiction, barriers to mobility, blindness, partially deaf, everything that you can think of that's a barrier to employment is inclusive. So with that particular workforce, you can find somebody who's only willing to work 8 hours a week because they have certain subsidies for their other disabilities, etc. That 8 hours is the most important 8 hours of their week. They come in and work harder than anybody else. They make everybody else in the business feel amazing that they're helping to contribute to this. And those folks, for the most part, are feeding the people who are very poor in the neighborhood. I don't have to worry about, in that particular thing, about having somebody with a 40-hour week who can't fulfill the labor duties. So there's not 32 wasted hours. So it's actually a huge benefit to people in business to hire folks who have barriers. It's a resource that's been largely untapped, and we work with the provincial and federal government to show how successful this can be, and also how wonderful it is as a community and a nation. So that's the business model itself works on that. There's dozens of nuances in it and how we capitalize on the social capital too. And what I say to people, a little business takeaway is, I've barely ever spent $1 on public relations, yet we're one of the most infamous or famous companies in Canada. And that's because of what we do. Not because we're just outspoken and obnoxious about it, that's my job, but because we're also doing good and being successful in it. If you understand buying media and what a column buy would look like, a Globe and Mail full page, which is one of our newspapers, would cost $500,000 on a weekend. We would get that for free. So you build that into the mechanics of your business and understand that it's really good idea to do social business because everybody gives a shit about it. They want to see it, they want to read it, they want to hear about it. So therefore, your business is propelled to the forefront and allows you to make all of that things, the things that you're trying to do, work. And you also get a lot of feedback, which is fantastic. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. There is a question, and there will be time for questions from you as well. Plus, we will be engaging you further as part of the presentations and comments here. But knowing and listening with a lot of interest about your product, Magnus, I realize that maybe one more component should be presented. It is really IT is a fantastic platform and an opportunity to, as you say, change human behavior. But you're using something else as well, something from human nature in another product, which was the UBI, yes, to make sure that more and more people are getting engaged and the network of users of your product is growing almost like a bushfire. And you have succeeded not only in European market, in European countries, but also in developing countries. So just a little bit, because here we have a person who said game is bad. That is my keyword.
Right. Okay, yeah, relating to gamification, just reflecting, computer games is actually, from some aspect, stealing time, or the purpose of a game is to use your time. The good parts about that is that it makes you, it's voluntarily. Nobody plays a computer game unless you're becoming an addict, but let's stay in the sanity format of it. Then it's a good piece of it as a feeling. When you can utilize those gamification aspects turned into physical movements or doing actionable actions, like changing from not going alone in car to at least ride sharing, or taking the car to a parking lot and then taking a commuter train, or going from car actually to bicycling a piece of the way, and so on. Then, and you can utilize the same mechanisms that are used in computer games, like levels, like points, and so on. That's a key driver that the digitalization can do. On the contrary, if I would say also, because there are dilemmas with it. You know, when you go to cafes today or in many aspects, people are just so engaged with their screens. Over time it's an overgoing thing, but it's easy to get stuck into that, even if it's good pieces. And here I like to say that it's so much more important as social entrepreneurs to care rather than just like. A lot of efforts also in the CSR area is about making some sort of change and put up a Facebook page or whatever, and you gain a lot of likes. And then you draw the conclusion that these likes actually change the behaviors. And there comes the real effort about what IT can help to do. It can also help to be the measurement, and people, either if they are obsessed by measuring for my own sake or collecting stamps, collecting this, collecting that. The good part is by sharing the measurement is that you actually can see the change, and when you can see the change, it also becomes easier to drive the movement, and thereby the digitalization helps to not getting stuck into the single case that needs to be promoted, spoken about in the newspapers, etc. Those things are still needed, but the digitalization part of it can also help underlying the foundational facts.
Now, I will collect 2 questions from the audience before we continue. If you need clarifications, if you want to just bring the discussion now on a different level.
Don't be shy.
Ne soyez pas timide.
Please.
Hello. Okay. So it's a question for Mark.
C'est une question pour
You say
Marc.
you're engaged in
Vous
social
dites que
interaction
vous
with
êtes engagé dans une
drug
interaction
addicts in
sociale
Vancouver.
avec
What was
les
your biggest
toxicomènes à
challenge in
Vancouver.
engaging with these
Quel
people?
a été vos plus gros
Were
défis
they
avec ces
receptive to your
personnes?
initiative,
Est-ce
or were they
qu'ils
not
étaient
willing to be
réceptifs?
helped?
Est-ce qu'ils voulaient être aidés ou
I
ne
think
pas
for clarity
être
there,
aidés?
we'll go back to my
Alors,
definition
je
of
vais
barrier
revenir
employment.
sur
We do work
ma
with people
définition.
who are battling
Nous faisons
addiction or
cela
recently
avec des
rehabilitated, etc.,
toxicomènes
but
qui
that
ont
they make up
subi
a portion
des
of what we do. And really the neighborhood suffers from a lot of things, and drug addiction is more of the medicine than it is the actual root of the problem, a lot of mental illness, right? Were people responsive? Yes, because I'm a business. You know, I'm not a social agency, I'm not funded by the government, I don't have charitable dollars coming in, I'm a legitimate business, and people take a lot of pride in finding themselves working for a business and being able to hold that job down. We don't have a no firing policy, but it's really, really hard to get fired. It's really hard. The most difficult part for me, we lose people pass away, people get incarcerated, and we had a particular gentleman who was working for us who got killed by police last year. Accidentally, he was in a cocaine psychosis, and it devastated the team. They were all just what felt like broken. And the most difficult thing was to rally them back together and make them understand that this is going to be constant. This will be throughout your employment with me. People are going to pass away. They're going to go to jail. Those things will happen. It doesn't define us. The moments that this gentleman had with us for 9 months before that happened were full of love, life, that he had a family, a community, and it was thought of as an equal, a dignified job, a wonderful human who just had addiction issues. To be able to say what really upsets me, one of the biggest challenges is language as well. So them, they, us, the separation is nonsensical. To describe people as addicts or animals or something stupid as that is so ridiculous to me. It's a human being. Has anybody ever woke up hungover? Like, some people get addicted to alcohol, it happens. And you have to know that the rest of humanity is there to support you. So one of the most difficult things, I've given you 5 answers, here's the 6th, is dealing with people who are so arrogant to think that they're better than anybody else.
Être contre les gens qui sont arrogants et qui disent moi je suis meilleur.
Other questions?
Y a-t-il d'autres questions?
I don't see very well from here, but
vois pas très bien.
Oh yeah, okay.
Oui, là je crois qu'il y a une question.
What are your motivations?
Et quelles
Why
sont
do you
vos
do that?
motivations? pourquoi est-ce que vous avez fait cela? Pourquoi faites-vous cela?
Three, yes.
Yeah,
Right.
sorry,
Nous,
please
alors
repeat.
c'est
Why do you do that?
Pourquoi
What are your
faites-vous ça?
motivations?
Quelles sont vos motivations?
That's a really good question. Can I add to that?
Question, est-ce que
So as a
vous
car
pouvez
company, what I
répondre?
heard or what I
Donc,
understood was
c'est
that they're trying to get people not to drive.
Ils essayent de faire en sorte que les gens ne
So
conduisent
I'm
pas de
dumbfounded.
voiture.
I love
Alors,
it.
je-
Don't get me wrong. I just don't
J'adore
understand.
But
ce que
it's-
vous faites.
it's,
Non, non.
First of all,
Non, tout d'abord,
you cannot pursue a business model where you want to sell
modèle,
vehicles
et
if
vendre des
there's all
voitures,
congested.
s'il y a un
That's
trafic,
that's sort of
s'il y a un
the
trafic, je
long
crois que,
You have to think and you have to
devez
engage with
penser
that.
à
We've been
ça, vous
100
devez-
years. Or Volvo existed almost 100
Volvo
years.
existe depuis
Started
100
from the
ans.
very
Il a
beginning
commencé
with
au
the
début
driven by quality and
avec la
safety.
qualité, la
And it's more or less a
sécurité,
symbol of
et
safety
c'est
today
le
after
symbole
100
de la
years consistent work on
sécurité,
that.
donc ça
1972, it took up the
En
core value of
72,
environmental care
nous avons
together with the
également- nous
first
sommes
UN
occupés de
conference on
l'environnement avec la
sustainability.
première
Then it said,
conférence
okay,
sur,
we
la
also need to embrace
durabilité.
environmental
On s'est
care.
dit,
So
on doit
now a
vraiment
little bit
s'occuper
more
de
than 40 years
l'environnement.
after, it's
Maintenant,
almost
40
part of
ans
the
après,
DNA.
ça fait partie,
However, there are big,
l'ADN
big
de la
challenges
société. Mais il y a
relating to
gros
this. Of
défis
course, a
qui,
lot
se
of
lient à ça.
colleagues,
Il y a pas
100,000
mal de
colleagues, a
collègues,
lot of
des
dealerships
centaines
and
de
so on
collègues, de
makes
concessionnaires,
exactly the
qui
same
font
first reflection.
exactement la
So it
première
takes a little bit
observation. Donc,
longer
ça prend un
to
petit peu plus de
understand
temps
that
pour
A,
comprendre
it's not
que,
all anti-car.
on n'est pas
Although our
anti-voiture.
target group is to
Et
shift
notre
people
groupe
who go
cible, c'est
alone
de
in car
changer et de faire en sorte
every
que
day
les
to
gens ne
and
conduisent
from
pas seuls
in
en
the
voiture tous
habitable
les
areas
jours.
and
Et
have the possibility to
qui
do a
donne
change
la
without
possibilité
destroying their
d'apporter
life
un
puzzle.
changement
They
sans
can still
changer
be
le processus de vie.
the what have you successful businesswoman or what have you,
Vous pouvez être
best
un bon
father,
entrepreneur,
teacher, what
vous
have
pouvez
you.
être un bon- un
You
bon
can still be
enseignant.
that, but
Vous
you
pouvez
can
toujours
change,
être cela,
and the
mais vous
change
pouvez
does not take
changer.
too much.
Et
It's
ce
more
changer ne
breaking
vous
the
demande pas
habit,
trop, ça.
and by
C'est
breaking
une
that
rupture
habit, you
des
actually get
habitudes, et
rewarded
en,
from that. And then,
en ce faisant,
as
vous
an
êtes récompensé.
enterprise or
Et
as
en
a
tant
company,
qu'entreprise, en
you
tant
will
que
actually
société,
gain from
en
that
fait,
because
vous
you
allez
also learn
gagner
from
quelque
where
chose
can
parce que
you
vous allez
where can you
apprendre
provide
où
new
vous
transport
pouvez
solutions.
fournir de
We're a
meilleures
big
solutions
part
de
of the
transport.
problem,
Et ça,
but
c'est un gros
knowing
problème.
so much
Mais
about the
si on
problem,
connaît tellement
it's
bien
better
le
that
problème,
we are part of
nous,
driving the change
nous allons
than
pouvoir
that these
apporter le
things will
changement.
come disruptively
Et-
and extinct the business, so to say. There are
L'ancienne
many answers to this. The short
méthode
one
va
is
disparaître.
we
Donc,
need to
la
get rid
réponse
of
est que nous
congestion
devons
to also
nous
provide our
débarrasser
products.
du
The long,
trafic
the longer term issues
et
is that it's
le
also part of
problème
our
à long
core
terme,
values. We want to
c'est
do
que
that. It feels great
ça
to
fait
work for a
partie de nos
company that
valeurs de
tackles these
base.
challenges.
Nous voulons traiter de ces problèmes en tant que société.
I hope this answered the question
J'espère,
because
que ça répond à
it
votre
is-
Also for the
question.
Philippines project for your work in Philippines. Why
Alors,
do you, what are your motivations?
Quelles sont vos motivations?
What's inside you
En vous,
for you to do
vous-même.
that?
I went through a very different life before building my business and just doing everything for my own greed and selfishness. And I found it very unsatisfying. And just maximizing profit and getting more and more and more is deeply, deeply unsatisfying. There's a big difference between pleasure and happiness. And so I went through an epiphany. I was at the top of my career with everything I could possibly imagine, millions of dollars in the bank, and I suddenly realized that it was all just empty. What am I going to do? Just spend the next 50 years getting more? And so I started to pray, and I prayed, Lord, why am I rich? You hear a lot of people praying, why am I poor? But I was asking, why am I blessed? It felt so unfair. It really felt wrong, deeply wrong. So when I started to go down that path, my life changed when I met Tony Melotto, because when I saw the work in the Philippines, my instinctive response was make a donation. And I emailed him and I said, I'm going to sell my car, I'm sending you $100,000, where shall I send the money? And his reply changed my life. He said, if you want to help, don't send your money. I don't need your money, it will not change my country. Why don't you come back and learn more about what we're doing? And when you write a check and you send it, you just feel the pain of parting with your money. But when you're able to go, you see the result of what your money does. You meet the people, you see their children, you feel the joy of giving. And this is very difficult to explain to people that haven't felt it, but there is real joy in giving, even joy in sacrifice, joy in serving other people. When you see them change, you see the good that's happening in their lives. And so this is like a drug, to see the good happening in other people and to know that, that you can actually contribute something. You know, in the West, we are taught that the way to be happy is all about yourself. It's my house, my car, my career, my stuff. More is the way to be happy, but of course it's all a lie. And what actually makes us happy as human beings is our relationships with other people and knowing that you're fulfilling God's purpose with your life. And so for me, the motivation is, personally, I believe that I went through that journey for a reason, and I have to keep finding more ways to give. And I'm not so worried about my own survival. Actually, I gave away all my money, everything, with nothing left. And I was not worried about it. Somehow I just kind of felt that things would be okay. And that's the time when we started Human Nature. And it's become successful. It's enough to provide for me and my children and my family. We have 5 children now, well, 4 and another one about to be born. And so I think if you really want to help people, you really want to do good, somehow God finds a way to take care of you as well.
Wonderful. I just want to make one comment here, which is important, I think, message from this session. Once again, we need to go beyond just feeling good and saying business is evil. This is what is out there. You read in the newspapers. Companies are terrible. They don't do anything good. It's all about greed. It's all about money. I think it's not fair to focus on this. We should focus on the purpose of business and on the difficult transformation which is going at the moment with the business community. It is a transformation of rediscovering what is the purpose of business, what has happened actually. And if we go history behind, what the successful companies of the past were, let's say, a century and a half ago. These were companies which were focused on providing services, good services, making good products, making people happy, good Ford moving on the streets. The producer is proud, the driver is proud. It's all about you take and you give. Now the business model has deformed to the degree of money, profit has become the sole purpose of business, not the reward for really doing a good job and providing good service. So what is in process of happening is turning around to this old truth about what companies should be about. Good products, good services. And because we live in the times now where we are facing serious challenges, sustainability challenges, serious social challenges, environmental problems, for a company to really accomplish its purpose, it's impossible not to address these issues. The society needs these issues to be addressed. So this is what brings all things together. A company can be and must be and will be profitable, but only if it meets the expectations of the society, which are linked to these issues and challenges we all have. So we still should accept it and believe it. We can do good, and we can be awarded, well rewarded for what we do. And the answer is in the balance and in the fairness. So more questions from the audience, or maybe some of my speakers have questions to the audience.
Yes, yeah. I think you brought up a good thing. And let's take this down to the individuals here. Why did you come? What motivated you to come to this session? What motivated you to come to this session? Let's see if we can get 2 examples as such. Anyone want to break the ice? What motivated you to come to this session?
She's nudging you. You definitely need to answer now because she asked the question. What motivated you? I'm looking right at you. Yeah, that's me.
Qu'est-ce qui vous a motivé?
just to discover your story and your motivation is the main important for me.
Do you feel like you got that?
Est-ce que vous avez obtenu cela?
A part of it.
Peut-être oui, peut-être non.
Thank you. Anyone
En
else?
partie.
One more.
Alors, y a-t-il une autre personne qui veut parler de ses motivations?
Or we will point someone, but it's so much nicer to feel the
Si
inner inertia.
personne ne se porte volontaire,
Why did I come
on va
here?
nommer un volontaire.
Yes.
C'est beaucoup plus désagréable, ça.
Yes, I wanted to tell I came here because I would like to be an actor to change something in the world. I work for Madagascar and we met the same problems. And I think thanks to you, I've got the idea to create a professional school because we help a sister which has a school, but we would like, I think that the idea I got is I would like to create a professional school because it's good them to go to school, but after they must find a job. And I think professional school will be, so thank you for your intervention, for your speech.
Yes. As far as I'm regarded, I came there just to open my mind to something else, because as many students there are studying in the university, so it's the occasion to see something else. But what I would like to add to your debate is that everyone should think of an about order of magnitude. I think it's good to help two or three people in the street, homeless people. But I think it's better if all these people studying management and business are in the future CEO of all the partners here and are putting into place sustainable policy in these companies. I think we should never forget order of magnitudes. And yeah, this is my message, and if you want to react on it,
I agree.
please.
I'm going to react. I'm already reacting. I was going to talk over you. I'm excited. So, I want the food banks to be out of a job. I want the homelessness to be eradicated. I don't want to be working on this in 15 years because I don't want it to be around. And I believe very strongly the movement is going so quickly, and there's a groundswell of people who care and know that they can fix this. It's happening. That we'll solve these things. We're going to. Instead of throwing millions and millions of dollars a minute, an hour, a day, it's sustaining the issues because people profit off of them, which is something we don't talk about very often. That we could put that same money into actually solving things. People with complicated issues don't just need a house, they need services to accompany that house, or they'll end up exactly where they were initially. So there's a lot of stuff and a lot of people in duplication and service, and to be able to concentrate on it and use your minds to create individual businesses or extensions to services or just the passion behind it to work within companies that you're going to infiltrate and teach the older guard that if they don't come around to this, just like eco in the 70s and 80s, it's now intrinsic. Social policy in a business will be intrinsic. Every business. Mark my words. So if you're not playing, you'll be out of the game.
Yeah, I agree. What we are hopefully showing is that it's possible. It's possible for a business to do good, but many of you might be much better than us. And you will be the next generation. And it needs not just one Mark, one Magnus, one me. It needs hundreds, thousands of people that think the same way. And so all that we can do, hopefully, is prove that loving the poor works. Doing things the right way works. You can build a successful business, a profitable business, doing things the right way. And you don't have to run a business out of fear that if you just maximize profit, that's the only way to survive. So that's hopefully what we're able to show.
I wanted we to have messages to the audience so we to inspire and prove that this is doable and we all can. So maybe you, Magnus, to add to this.
In our concluding,
Yes.
reaching the concluding and so on, because time is all you got. So you better prioritize your time. So thereby I just want to repeat the same message I opened with. Set your target, see the progress, and share experiences. Then you will grow. You're fantastic. Thank you very much for being here.
Merci beaucoup d'être ici.
We have a few more minutes, and I will open now for concluding remarks from my speakers, if you are inspired to say a few more words, or even from the audience, because we have this session in a circle. It is really a community here.
Well, you guys took the first step just by coming here. I think you want to believe that change is possible. And Barack Obama said, we are the change that we've been waiting for. Don't wait for someone else. Don't wait for us to do it. Go out there and do it. Start your own business. The only message I hope you take away from this is that you can have the courage to do it. You don't need to know anything. You don't need to have money. You just need to have the motivation and not quit on your idea, on your passion, on your love for doing things in a way that's going to change the world. So go out there and do it yourself.
I like this guy. I'd vote for him. Can I come work for you? I concur with that statement, absolutely. And I think the most important thing to know and to understand, and it's a message that I want to spread wide and far, is that we're all very flawed and that we all make a lot of mistakes. And that failure that we're taught that we're not allowed to do, you're going to. The more you fail, the better you'll be. The more flawed, and understanding those flaws is the more impact that you will have. And people can connect with you when you're real, when you truly show your intention and what you want to do. There is no mistake, and your businesses will flourish because of it. How many people today? Well, we know how many hands said that they weren't going to start their own business. How many people now feel like they would? Show of hands. Just you? All right. I'll fund you. You too? Okay. You? Okay. Fantastic. Keep digging. We're three of thousands. And this whole entire forum is full of incredible people who've been successful, and a lot of us with no education. And it is really just about your passion and following it. So do that, please.
Many thanks for you coming early, maybe even skipping breakfast. I'm sure that the coffee is never enough at 8:30 in the morning. So we wish you a fantastic day, other sessions, big discussions, networking, and just once again, no fear. Change is possible, and it's all up to us.